This is a preview of the final result, the seamless underarm. Here is a side view of the same area. The gaps were closed neatly and securely and without any extra stitches. And this is how it works. There is a raglan line ending on one side and another raglan line ending on the other side. The underarm stitches were created here, and then the body of the sweater was worked down and the sleeve was worked up. And these are two areas, here and on the opposite side, where the knitting changes direction and creates gaps that have to be closed. In the previous episode, I separated the stitches of the sleeves from the stitches of the body, cast on the underarm stitches, and worked a few centimeters of the body of the sweater. In this episode, I will share how to start the sleeves, how to securely and symmetrically close the gaps, and a useful way of making the first decreases. It's a good time to start knitting the sleeves. I like it this way better because it's less bulky, and after I finish the sleeves, then I will continue knitting the body of the sweater all the way down. Now I'm going to replace these stoppers with the needle tips. This will be my right needle tip. I'll take out the stopper. And I'm replacing it with the tip. Tighten to secure. And replacing the left side stopper with the left hand needle tip. Just a note, my right needle tip is bigger than the left one because it's easier to work this way. Because it's a circular knitting, the right needle tip is the one that determines the gauge, and with the left needle tip smaller, it makes it easier to insert the tip into the stitches. Now I'm going to remove my safety pins. Now I'm going to undo this provisional cast-on row, and if you remember, it's both ends. The left one is the beginning of the provisional casting on, and it was done in this direction, so this is the last stitch, and it will be much easier to undo it from right to left. For convenience, I'm going to use a tapestry needle. So I'm undoing the last stitch of the provisional row, and this is the first stitch of the underarm on this end, and this stitch is secure because it is joined with this loop, so it will not be undone. There is no risk. So I can safely remove the provisional yarn and insert my right hand needle tip back to front into that stitch, like this. And I find it is easier to just pull the provisional stitches up to find the stitches of the underarm and undo them one by one, like this. Pull up, insert back to front into the underarm stitch, again pull up the provisional stitch, insert the needle back to front, pull up, insert back to front, back to front, and you can see it's very easy to undo these provisional stitches from right to left. That was the whole purpose of doing it the way that I showed earlier. So it makes it easy to do now. So the last couple of stitches. One more stitch. And the last stitch on this end is also secure. I will show a little closer because it has this loop attached to it, so it will also never drop. So I can safely remove the remaining of the provisional yarn and insert my right needle tip back to front into that stitch. So that's it. All the stitches of the underarm are now securely placed on the needle. Because I'm going to continue knitting the sleeves using magic loop, I will pull out now the cable on both sides, roughly in the middle somewhere, like this, and also on the other side. So that's it. Those are the two loops of magic loop. These are the underarm stitches of the sleeve, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I have one more stitch than I had for the body of the sweater, and that's because of the double-sided nature of the provisional casting on. I think it's a very important fact to consider, especially if there is a particular stitch pattern. I'm going to place now my marker of the beginning of the round with the row counter. And I will have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches on the left, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches on the right. Because the top of the sleeve on this side has one more stitch than the top of the sleeve on the left side. That's why here I have plus stitch and here minus stitch. So altogether the right and left sides have the same number of stitches. Now I'm taking a new ball of yarn and I'm ready to start the sleeve. I will join the new yarn here in the middle of the underarm. For silk, linen, cotton and mohair, there is also an option to join the new yarn here at the end of the raglan line and then weave in the ends into the raglan line instead of the stitches of the underarm. But because I have wool, which is easy to weave in, I will start here at the marker, and this will be my round. To begin, I have to first bring the stitches closer to the needle tips and then transfer the stitches of the left half of the underarm onto the left needle tip, because my first stitch will be right after the yellow marker, like this. Now I can take my yarn tail and just put it inside. I leave about 20 centimeters or so. Again, I bring all the stitches closer to the tips on both sides. And I will knit my first stitch. This stitch is not secure, so I like to hold the yarn tail like this and press it onto the right hand needle tip and knit a few more stitches. So I have 4 stitches, I have 3 left. Stitch number 5, number 6, and this is the last stitch before this area that usually looks like a gap. I'm going to close this gap in 2 steps. So the first step, I'm going to slip the stitch off from left to right, and then insert the left tip front to back under the loop and place the stitch onto the left tip like this and knit them both from right to left. Now if you look closer, these 2 stitches are joined with a bridge. That's the horizontal bridge. And on that bridge there is a loop, a vertical loop. I will knit the left stitch together with this loop. I pull it up a little bit like this, and then I'm turning it counterclockwise and inserting the left hand needle tip back to front into that loop. It may feel a little awkward, but it's on purpose. I move the stitches closer to the tips again, and then I will knit together the first stitch of the top of the sleeve with this twisted loop. It's a little bit tight, but it will make a big difference later on. Like this. And pull the working yarn a bit to tighten. And I will knit a few stitches. Again, tighten the next stitch. A few more stitches. And this is what it looks like now. There is no gap, and the area is very secure. I can pull it in different directions and there is no opening, and there will never be any opening. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and close the other gap. This is the other gap on the other side of the underarm, and again between these 2 stitches there is a horizontal bridge. This is the bridge, and the same vertical loop sitting on the bridge. I will knit this vertical loop together with the last stitch of the top of the sleeve. First I slip the stitch from left to right, and then I use my helping tapestry needle, pull up this slope a bit, and I'm turning it clockwise like this, and I'm placing it onto the left tip, twisted. Then return the stitch onto the left tip and knit together with the twisted loop. Now the second step, I will knit this horizontal loop with the stitch of the underarm. I lift it back to front and place it back to front onto the left tip and knit it together with the first stitch of the underarm. Again, it may be a little bit tight, but it's for a good purpose. And tighten. I will knit a few stitches and we'll show how it looks. My marker, this was the first stitch of the sleeve. I will pass it because it's not secure. Just a few more stitches. And at this point I tag the yarn tail a little bit just to tighten this area so it looks neat. And I've completed the first round. And now we can take a look at the second area that was a gap before. I'll pull out the needle tip and we can see that the gap is closed, the stitches are close to one another, so there is no hole. And I'll pull out the left hand needle tip. There was a gap here before, and now it's completely closed as well. This is the first gap of the other sleeve. Step 1, I will work together this horizontal loop with the last stitch of the underarm. First I bring the stitches closer to the tip and then slip from left to right the last stitch of the underarm. Insert the right tip back to front under that loop, place both of them onto the left tip and knit them together. Now again, there is this bridge between the two stitches. That's the horizontal part of the bridge. And this vertical loop that sits on the bridge. I'm going to work this loop together with the first stitch of the top of the sleeve. I pull it up and I turn it counterclockwise and place like this, twisted onto the left needle tip. Again, bring the stitches closer to the tips and I will knit these stitches together from left to right. Making sure I'm in both stitches, and it's done. And tighten the working yarn a bit. Knit one more stitch, tighten again, and I will knit all my stitches. But first, I'll show how this area looks now. It looks completely closed, there is no gap, and it's very secure. This is the gap on the other side. It's very big. Now I'm going to close this gap as well. Again, it's the same algorithm. This horizontal bridge between the two stitches. It has this vertical loop sitting on it. And again, I will work this loop together with the last stitch of the top of the sleeve. First, I slip the stitch from left to right onto the right tip. Then I'm taking my tapestry needle and I pull this loop up a bit, and I'm going to turn it clockwise and place it twisted onto the left needle tip, like this. Return the stitch from the right tip on the left tip and knit them both together, making sure I get into both stitches. Like this. And step 2, again the horizontal bridge together with the first stitch of the underarm. I place it back to front onto the left tip. And knit the first stitch of the underarm together with that loop. And tighten my working yarn very well. I will knit a few stitches and will show how it looks. And this is the result. Again, it's a very secure way to close the gap. There is no space between the stitches. They are sitting tightly close to one another. I've closed the gaps on both sides during the first round. The next step is additional to further secure those areas. On the right, these are the stitches of the underarm, and on the left, the stitches of the top of the sleeve. And I will make my first decrease by working the first stitch of the top of the sleeve with the last stitch of the underarm together. And I will do it on the other side as well, and will make it symmetrical. The first decrease, I knit together from left to right those two stitches, just like this. And the other decrease on the other side, I slip the first stitch, slip the second stitch, and knit them together. This is how the former gaps look like now, after they were first securely closed during the first round and then with additional decreases. This is after finishing 5 rounds. This is one side of the first sleeve, the other side of the same sleeve, again no gaps. And here when I finished the sleeves, you can see how the corners look like. There are no extra stitches, no gaps. They look symmetrical on both sides, and the underarms are seamless. And it looks really good after washing and blocking. In the next episode, I will share how to weave in the yarn tail.